Thank you for joining today's daily webinar. Thinking about tapping into your retirement savings without triggering taxes or penalties? If you are self-employed or run your own business and you've set up or are planning to set up a self-directed solo 401k, you might have a powerful option most people overlook: the 401k loan feature. In this webinar, we are diving into how much you can actually borrow from your solo 401k and what you need to know before taking that step. Today's webinar is for educational purposes. Please also subscribe to our channel for more daily webinars and to help get the word out to other solopreneurs like you. You'll learn the answer to critical questions on today's webinar. Questions like, how does the 50% or $50,000 401k participant loan rule really work? What counts as your vested balance? Can you take multiple loans? What if you have multiple 401k accounts or prior loans? And what happens if you don't pay it back on time? Yes, you need to pay the loan back. That's why it's called a solo 401k participant loan. So whether you're looking to fund your business, pay off high interest debt, or just want more flexibility with your savings, understanding the self-directed solo 401k loan rules could save you thousands. As always, go ahead and shoot over any questions you might have during today's daily webinar. It doesn't have to be on this particular topic. It can also be questions surrounding IRAs, business financing, aka Rob's 401k, and of course, questions about solo 401k plans, or even traditional 401k plans for that matter. So how does the 50% or $50,000 loan rule really work? Well, for starters, the 50% rule, along with all the 401k loan rules for that matter, are IRS regulations, which means that they're not rules that have been put in place by the solo 401k plan provider per se, but rather they're IRS regulations. Where the solo 401k plan provider comes into play is that not all solo 401k plan providers will provide a plan that allows for participant loans. Companies that do not allow for participant loans are traditional firms like Fidelity, Schwab, as well as banks, whether it's Chase Bank, Wells Fargo, or Bank of America. But when you use a self-directed solo 401k plan provider like my solo 401k Financial, they do provide a plan document that allows for 401k participant loans, and what is more, they allow you to hold your funds at the institution of your choice. Therefore, many clients of my solo 401k Financial use Fidelity and Schwab to hold the solo 401k funds for the plan that they offer. So the plan provider is my solo 401k Financial, whose plan document allows for participant loans. And Fidelity and Schwab, even though they offer their own separate solo 401k, they provide brokerage accounts for a solo 401k plan offered by my solo 401k Financial, whose plan allows for the loan. And they understand that it's my solo 401k Financial that is preparing the loan documents and educating the client on how the regulations work, not only surrounding solo 401k plans, but also the loan regulations. My solo 401k Financial will also assist the client in opening up the bank and, opening the brokerage accounts at Fidelity or Schwab if you use those institutions to hold the solo 401k funds. So don't confuse the solo 401k plan offered by a Fidelity or a Schwab, which does not allow for participant loans, with the solo 401k plan offered by my solo 401k financial that does allow for participant loans and does allow you to use Fidelity or Schwab to hold the solo 401k funds. And that's where the loan proceeds will be processed from once my solo 401k financial prepares those loan documents. So you can borrow 50% of your total vested balance. Vested balance with the solo 401k essentially means all the funds in the plan as well as all the investments. But you might have a solo 401k plan where you have holdings in equities or even real estate or crypto or private equity, and you may have cash. You add all those assets and that cash together to determine the value of your plan, and then you base that 50% test to determine the maximum you can borrow from the plan. So the maximum you can borrow is 50% of your total vested balance. So all the assets in the plan, all cash in the plan, not to exceed $50,000. So 50,000 is the maximum you can borrow from your solo 401k plan. For example, let's say you have a plan valued at $200,000. Let's say that $100,000 of that total 200,000 value is made up of stocks or mutual funds, and the rest is cash. Well, the maximum you can borrow is going to be $50,000. Even though the total value is 200,000, the maximum you can borrow is 50% of your total balance, not to exceed $50,000. On the flip side, let's say the balance of your solo 401k plan is $80,000, consisting of 40,000 of cash and 40,000 of equities like stocks or mutual funds. You can borrow 50% of 80,000, which is $40,000. That's the maximum you can borrow. If let's using that same 80,000 example, let's say you only have 30,000 in cash and you have 50,000 in equities. Even though you can borrow the full 40,000, you only have $30,000 in cash. So you're only going to be able to borrow $30,000 unless you sell some of those securities. So that's how it works regarding the maximum you can borrow, as well as vested balance, including securities and all cash in that account. Can you take multiple 401k participant loans? You can. You can borrow multiple amounts from the solo 401k plan. However, you cannot go over that $50,000 aggregate between all of your loans or all of your solo 401k plans. So you might try to get creative and open up another solo 401k plan, which is actually a red flag with the government, and try to borrow another 50%. That's not allowed. You have to aggregate all your loans from all of your solo 401k plans. So you can only borrow 50%, not to exceed 50,000 between all your plans, even if you process multiple loans from the same plan or for both plans. And then we're talking about solo 401k plans. Don't confuse if you also have a full-time employer plan. For example, let's say Jane works for Google or Walmart, and she participates in the Walmart 401k plan. She can borrow from that Walmart 401k plan up. So let's say she borrows $50,000 from that Walmart 401k plan, and then she's also self-employed on the side and opens up a solo 401k plan. She can borrow from her solo 401k plan as well. Let's say she transfers over $100,000 in cash to the solo 401k plan. Now she can borrow $50,000 from her solo 401k plan. So she may have borrowed $50,000 from her Walmart 401k full-time employer plan, and then she can also borrow another $50,000 from her self-employed solo 401k plan, resulting in two separate loans. And that's because Jane is not an owner of the Walmart 401k. She's simply an employee of that plan, and that's not a solo 401k plan, but rather a traditional 401k plan for full-time employers. Now, what happens if you don't pay the loan back? Well, if you don't pay the loan back, then your loan goes into default, and then it's going to be treated as a taxable distribution. So the outstanding balance will be treated as a taxable distribution, but that doesn't get you off the hook of still having to pay that loan back. Not only do you get taxed on the outstanding balance if the loan goes into default, but you still have to pay it back. So you're going to have to pay it back into a separate holding account in the plan So that way later on, when you close the plan and you go to take a distribution of those funds or transfer those funds out, those have to be separately tracked, especially for distribution purposes, so that you don't get taxed again. But yes, it's a very quirky situation when the loan goes into default. Not only do you have to treat the outstanding balance as a taxable distribution in the year that it went into default, but you also have to continue making payments into a separate holding account within the plan. Again, go ahead and shoot over any questions you might have during the live webinar, and we'll go ahead and answer those questions as they come in. Please also subscribe to our channel here for more daily webinars and to help get the word out to other solopreneurs like yourself. So when you process a solo 401k loan, you can't just process the funds. Specific loan documents have to be prepared. Companies like my solo 401k Financial will prepare those loan documents. They'll provide the loan application, the loan agreement, and the payment amortization schedule, and they include that type of service in their annual fee, so they don't charge additional fees for that service. The proceeds of the loan are distributed from the solo 401k holding account. So let's say we help you use Fidelity or Schwab to hold the funds for the solo 401k plan. So the funds will be dispersed from that Fidelity brokerage account for the plan offered by my solo 401k Financial. Those funds are dispersed to your personal bank account. They have to flow to your personal bank account, not to your business bank account. That would be considered a distribution. If it goes to your business bank account, it's got to go to your personal bank account, because the loan regulations require that you as the participant can borrow from the plan. What you do with those funds after you borrow doesn't matter. You can use them for your business. You can use them to pay off other debt. You can use them for any purpose, in other words. And of course, regarding the loan term, you can borrow for 5 years, consisting of principal and interest, which all goes back to your own plan. So you're paying your own plan back. So they would flow back to the solo 401k holding account. The payments are made monthly or quarterly over 5 years. They're fixed payments. You can also borrow for a period of 15 or even 30 years, but only if the proceeds are used towards the purchase of your primary residence. So if you already have a primary residence, then you cannot use it to buy a second home. So it cannot be for that 15, 30-year period. You can use it to buy a second home, but it has to be paid back over 5 years, not 15 or 30 years. Okay. Some other items here. When you borrow from the plan, there's no credit check because you're borrowing from your own plan. We talked about how you can have multiple loans. We talked about the loan payment terms. We talked about how we prepare the plan loan documents. That about covers everything for today. I don't see any other questions today on the live stream. Until next time, have a good rest of the day.